Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
You know that feeling, right? Anxiety starts creeping in, thoughts racing, maybe you feel a bit restless, and someone says, oh, just try being mindful.
Yeah, that advice comes up a lot.
It does. But it got me thinking, is all mindfulness the same? And does it work the same way for everyone, especially with different kinds of anxiety?
That's a really good question. And it touches on something we're going to explore today. We've got a couple of sources here, a health news article and a pretty detailed scientific research paper.
Okay, so we're doing a deep dive. What's the mission here?
Well, the goal is really to get past that simple, just be mindful advice. We want to look at the, let's say, nuanced relationship between mindfulness, different types of anxiety, and this mental skill called cognitive control, using these sources, of course.
Got it. So let's start with the scientific paper. What's the core argument they're making?
Basically, they're saying that a lot of the past research looking at anxiety, mindfulness, and cognitive control together has given us kind of mixed results, inconsistent findings.
Why is that?
They suggest it's often because these concepts, anxiety, mindfulness, cognitive control, were treated as if they were just single, straightforward things, like anxiety is just one feeling.
What it's not.
Exactly. So the researchers propose we need to think about them as having multiple facets or dimensions, as they call it.
Dimensions. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do they break down anxiety, for instance? What are its dimensions?
Right. So first they talk about anxiety as a clinical disorder. Think generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
These usually involve being constantly hyper alert, maybe avoiding certain situations.
Okay, like a diagnosed condition.
Yes. Then there's what they call trait anxiety.
Yeah.
This is more about your personality, sort of your general tendency to see things as threatening and feel physically keyed up more easily than others.
So some people are just naturally more prone to feeling anxious.
Kind of, yeah. It can make someone more vulnerable to developing an actual anxiety disorder.
Why?
And then there's state anxiety.
That sounds like the in-the-moment feeling.
Precisely. Those temporary feelings of nervousness, worry, maybe your heart races. It's tied to your autonomic nervous system kicking in right then.
Okay, clinical trait state. Is that it?
Well, they go even deeper. They split trait anxiety into anxious apprehension. That's the repetitive negative thinking, the constant worry.
The mental hamster wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And anxious arousal, which is more the physical side, feeling jumpy, hypervigilant, the bodily sensations.
Okay.
And they do something similar for state anxiety, breaking it down into worry, the immediate mental stuff, and panic or fear, which are those really intense, overwhelming surges.
Wow, okay. That's definitely more detailed than just anxiety. So what about this cognitive control thing? What are its dimensions?
Right, cognitive control. Think of it as your brain's executive function. It helps you manage your goals, direct your attention, stay focused, ignore distractions.
A mental manager.
Pretty much. And just like anxiety, they argue it's not just one thing. They mention a specific framework, the dual mechanisms of control, or DMC.
Dual mechanisms, meaning two main ways it works.
Exactly. They distinguish between proactive control and reactive control.
Proactive and reactive. What's the difference there?
So proactive control is about anticipating. It's actively keeping your goal in mind to guide your attention before distractions even show up, like planning your route before you start driving to avoid traffic.
Okay, being prepared mentally.
Right. Reactive control is more about responding on the fly. It kicks in when you actually encounter interference, a distraction, or something unexpected, and you need to adjust right then and there.
Like slamming on the brakes if someone cuts you off.
Exactly. It's dealing with a problem after it appears.
Okay, proactive is goal maintenance, reactive is interference response.
Got it. So how does mindfulness fit into all this? What are its dimensions?
Well, paper points out mindfulness isn't just one thing either. It can be a trait. Some people are naturally more mindful. It can be a state you're in, like being really present right now. It can be a skill you develop. And, importantly, it can be a training method or intervention.
And the paper focuses on the training part. Mostly, yes. And within mindfulness training, they highlight two core components you often see: focused attention and open monitoring.
Focused attention and open monitoring. How do they differ?
Focused attention is pretty much what it sounds like. You deliberately concentrate on one specific thing, maybe your breath, a sound, a sensation, and when your mind wanders, which it will,
Always does.
right, you just gently bring your focus back. Open monitoring is different. It's more about cultivating a wide open awareness. You observe whatever comes into your experience, thoughts, feelings, sounds without latching onto them or judging them.
Like watching clouds drift by.
That's a great analogy, yeah. Just noticing them come and go. And some research even tries to dismantle these practices, studying focused attention on its own versus open monitoring on its own to see their specific effects.
Okay, so we have all these different facets of anxiety, cognitive control, and mindfulness. How do scientists actually, measure the cognitive control part in the lab? What are these experimental paradigms?
Ah, right. Those are the specific tasks they use. You've probably heard of some, like the Stroop test.
Where the word blue is written in red ink and you have to say red?
Exactly. That tests your ability to inhibit that automatic response of reading the word. It taps into cognitive control, specifically inhibition. There are other tasks too, like flanker tasks or tests designed to measure working memory updating or task switching.
Different tests for different aspects of control?
Yes, and some task batteries are even specifically designed now to tease apart proactive versus reactive control strategies.
Okay, this is all very detailed. So what's the big takeaway? Why does breaking it down like this matter for someone struggling with anxiety?
Well, the huge implication is that maybe that generic just be mindful advice isn't the best approach for everyone. It might be too simplistic.
Because different types of anxiety might need different types of help.
Exactly. If anxiety shows up differently, more as worry versus more as physical panic, and if our cognitive control system has these different modes, proactive versus reactive, then it stands to reason that certain mindfulness practices might connect better with certain patterns.
So could you give an example? Like if someone's main issue is constant worry loops.
Okay, so the researchers theorize, if someone's anxiety is mostly that anxious apprehension, the worry, which makes it hard to stay focused, maybe that's linked to difficulty with proactive control, right? Difficulty keeping their mind on their goals instead of the worries.
Makes sense.
Then perhaps practices that strengthen focused attention, like repeatedly bringing your focus back to your breath, might be particularly helpful for them. It could train that proactive control muscle, so to speak.
And what about the other side? Someone who gets hit with intense physical anxiety or panic?
Well, if someone experiences more anxious arousal or panic, that sudden intense physical reaction, maybe that's related to an over-reliance on reactive control, being constantly jolted by internal or external triggers. For them, the researchers suggest that open monitoring practices might be more beneficial. Learning to observe those intense sensations and thoughts without immediately reacting could help create a bit more space and balance, maybe reducing that dependence on just reactive coping.
So it's about matching the practice to the problem, potentially. This lines up with the news article suggesting tailored approaches then.
It does align with that general idea, yes, moving beyond one size fits all.
Now, you mentioned the scientific paper is a review, right? It's synthesizing other studies. Does that mean there are limitations we should keep in mind?
Absolutely. It's really important to remember this paper is proposing a framework and reviewing past work. It's not presenting new experimental data itself.
So it's a roadmap, not the destination.
A good way to put it. And the researchers are upfront about limitations in the studies they reviewed. Different studies defined and measured anxiety, mindfulness, and cognitive control in slightly different ways.
Ah, the consistency problem they mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Plus, they often looked at different groups of people. And there's also this challenge called task impurity in cognitive control research.
Task impurity.
Yeah, it means that even a task designed to measure one specific thing, like inhibition, might accidentally involve other cognitive processes too, like working memory. It's hard to get a perfectly pure measure of just one aspect.
Okay, so it's complex to measure these things cleanly. So while this framework is useful, it's still evolving. What do the experts generally say? We have the news article and the paper researchers.
Well, the quote in the news article reflects a pretty common view. A lot of research has shown that mindfulness can reduce anxiety symptoms. It's a general endorsement.
Mindfulness can help.
Right. But the researchers from the scientific paper are pushing for more precision. They're saying, okay, which mindfulness techniques work best for which specific anxiety symptoms and why? They really want to understand the underlying cognitive mechanisms.
Linking it back to proactive and reactive control.
Precisely. They want future research to test these specific links.
And they had those specific hypotheses you mentioned earlier.
Yes, to recap briefly, they theorize that anxious apprehension, the worry component, might mess with proactive control, and focused attention practice could help that.
Okay.
And that anxious arousal, the panic or physical hyperreactivity, might involve leaning too heavily on reactive control, and open monitoring could help balance that out, by fostering non-reactive observation.
This has definitely given me a lot to think about regarding mindfulness and anxiety. It feels much less like a single thing now. So, what's the main message for someone listening? What should they take away?
I think the main thing is maybe to start observing your own experience a bit more closely. When you feel anxious, what does it feel like for you? Is it mostly racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating that might hint towards the proactive control side?
Or is it more physical, that sudden jolt, feeling overwhelmed by sensations?
Right, which might lean more towards the reactive control side. And then if you explore mindfulness, notice what kind of practice it is. Is it mostly about focusing on one thing, bringing your attention back again and again?
That's focused attention.
Or is it more about allowing whatever comes up to just be there, watching it, without getting caught up?
Open monitoring.
Yeah. So you can become a sort of investigator of your own experience. Pay attention to what types of anxiety you feel and which types of practices, maybe focused attention or open monitoring, seem to resonate or feel more helpful for those specific experiences.
So it's about self-awareness and maybe a bit of experimentation to see what fits best for your particular pattern of anxiety.
Exactly. It puts a bit more agency back in your hands, moving beyond just following a generic instruction.
That's a really powerful takeaway. It makes you wonder, could really digging into these cognitive mechanisms, understanding how different mindfulness practices affect things like proactive and reactive control, could that be the key to unlocking much more personalized and ultimately more effective ways to manage anxiety?
It certainly suggests there's a lot more potential there than just telling everyone to be mindful in the exact same way. There's likely more depth to explore.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Do Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.